Then we are on to the second topic, and that's the promises about composable commerce. I tend to always start in a different place. I start with good old Charles Darwin. 200 years ago, he said, it's not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but the ones most responsive to change. That's also why we are here talking about composable, because it's the way of changing a setup in a fast and efficient way that really makes you truly responsive to change. Nobody really knows what's going to happen in 2, 3 years time, and that's the responsiveness that you need. And we all agree that being stuck on an old monolith is difficult. It's hard. You have zero responsiveness. At least I had zero responsiveness back in the days when I was stuck on a SAP Hybris monolith before SAP realized that Hybris is something you commit according to Greek mythology, and then Nemesis comes and kicks your ass afterwards. We felt for sure the pain of Nemesis on a daily basis. But I really like your thinking on this, Marcus. So what do you think the promises of a composable are?
Yeah, that's a pretty good one. And I would say you answered it indirectly by that quote of Charles Darwin. I would say today, the only thing which we can predict for the future is change. Yeah, we are living in that VUCA environment, meaning everything is volatility, uncertainty, complex, and ambiguity in that case. And while we choose composable, or most of the merchants are choosing composable architectures in that case, is because they're getting promised that it's super flexible, that you can scale as hell. Yeah, you can swap out everything and you can adapt to the market's needs. That it's super simple to buy because you have all those pre-made packaged business capabilities, and you just have to glue it together. Yeah. Of course, you can choose the best of breed and choose the vendor you like. You don't have to stuck with one vendor, and you most probably don't have that vendor lock. You're getting promised performance, which is excellent, of course, and everyone is promising that the costs are absolutely on point because you just use or you just pay what you're using. So that's basically what's being stated by the marketing on the one side. That's basically the way of thinking why merchants are choosing that. And as we have an opinionated view on topics, I would say if you do it right, I'm doing a check mark on that. But there's a flip side of the coin, which is if you don't do it right, it's pretty hard to build composable, to be honest. Yeah, because those complex integrations where you just have to connect all the pieces together and glue it in the right way together, like CMS, payment gateways, PIM, and so on and so forth. You need a sophisticated knowledge for doing those stuff, yeah, and integrated it in the right way, so to say. Then this ends up in a kind of customization complexity, yeah. That means tailoring each component to the needs that you have efforts or requires special skills on that side, and that means that you really have to have a kind of architecture and team which is tech addicted and is able to talk and implement tech. So I would say it's not a kind of starter solution in that case. Also, when it comes to the vendor management, which is promised by you're not stuck by one vendor, you're getting to the point that you have to streamline SLAs, for example. Yeah. So if you choose a PIM, if you choose a commerce orchestration platform, a commerce platform, the CMS, and so on and so forth, you have to make sure that your SLAs and your contract are streamlined. And if, I don't know, the front end has a better SLA rather than the back end, then you're in serious trouble, because then maybe the front end is available, but the back end is not responding, and topics like that. Yeah. And you will also get to the point that you're constantly improving into the performance. Yeah. So you have to invest also a kind of your development budget all the time by keeping the performance up to speed and up to date. By the way, it's the same on the monolithic side, so that's not a perk, I would say. Yeah. And what's also hard, I would say, and most of the merchants or people don't see there, is the data synchronization. Yeah. The marketing is building that shiny picture, hey, you can swap all the components, but really have the data synchronized so that if you make the API call from the front end, you're getting the right subset for, let's say, an article in terms of pricing, warehouse, stock, and so on and so forth. Those are the complex things by integrating the backend and legacy systems really deeply. Again, all those things doing right are leveraging merchants as hell, I would say. But if you do it wrong and you're not thinking thoroughly over it beforehand, then I would say you're getting definitely in serious trouble. That's my point of the two flip sides of the medal. And Toke, what's your take on that?
I totally agree. And just to add a little bit, what about the editors of this world? They are now in a composable world. They need to go into many different systems. So
Yeah.
you also need to implement a lot of standard operating procedures that is completely communicated outside. It's composability has been thought through by technical engineers, really well thought through. But the marketeers of this world, I do see that they are struggling with this. And
Yeah.
the other side of it, I really like this one from Gartner that I found a couple of years ago by adopting composable thinking. Because there's so many things that we traditionally do, and we continue to do it despite implementing a composable setup. So, how do we control change? How do we design things to last? But in a composable world, we don't need to design things to last. We need to design things to what works today. What can we change in order to grow? We need to change things often because the future requires your responsiveness. But responsiveness not only comes from your technical setup, it also comes from your organizational setup and your
Absolutely.
process. So implementing a composable setup with all the good promises of flexibility and responsiveness to change, you need to implement those thinking into all the other stuff, the organization, the processes that needs to be in place as well. And just looking at some of these elements here, I do know change is hard, but thinking completely different like this is extremely hard and something that an organization implementing a composable setup should actually consider quite heavily before they start investing into this. And so my starting point is that I one of the ones that embrace composability the most. But there are so many things that you need as an organization to really consider before you embark on that journey, because it will give you responsiveness, but
Absolutely.
it will also give you complexity in a different way that you need to be able to understand and handle. And let's be honest, not everyone is ready for that. Do you
Absolutely.
agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. So I would say composable things or the composable journey is not something technical which you buy. It's a kind of mindset which you have to have. And then
Yes.
you're going a path of transformation. And if you do it right and have partners who are, I would say, skilled on that and have real life experience, basically you're much more flexible to adapt to the markets. And maybe composable, or the effect of composable, comes not at the beginning, rather on the journey when you implement it, but we will discuss that later in the talks.
Yes.
I'll have a look on the productivity, but as you ended up, it's basically a kind of mindset which can leverage you if you do it right. Perfect.
Yeah. And then you just remember one thing: don't build anything yourself. In the composable world, you need to stick on standards as much as you can. And then there is a final question, which is really, really nasty to answer. Are you really that special that you should do custom code? Most companies tend to say, "Oh, I'm really special in this way, so I need to build something there." But they should actually ask another question, much more interesting. Why not standard?
Yeah,
And they should
absolutely.
ask it in every single decision that they have today, because standards is there to be used. It makes you much more scalable, much more flexible to the future. So there's a lot of questions that you as an organization needs to actually ask yourself before going into composable. And I think that's crucial, and many doesn't really ask those questions.